Kia ora and welcome back to Returning to Wholeness. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Steve LeFebvre to the podcast, a breathwork facilitator, consciousness educator, and someone who has spent decades exploring the connection between mindful living, personal transformation, and the human potential. Steve's journey is a unique blend of business leadership and inner work. Alongside many years in the business world, he immersed himself in the study and practice of yoga, meditation, spiritual psychology, and conscious connected breathwork. Through this integration, he now helps people reconnect with themselves through one of the greatest tools for healing and transformation, the breath. In this conversation, we explore the profound impact breathwork can have on our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being, how expanding our consciousness changes the way we experience life, and why something as special as the breath has the power to bring us home to ourselves. Whether you're completely new to breathwork or have experienced its transformative power before, this episode is filled with wisdom, insight, and practical inspiration. So take a deep breath, settle in, and enjoy my conversation with Steve LeFebvre. How are you, Steve?
I am absolutely brilliant today. It's a gorgeous day here. It's sunshine is out and I'm just feeling alive and present.
A little bit of a show off considering we're back here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, experiencing the winter weather, and you're over in...
I'm actually today I am on the east coast of the US.
Okay.
So an hour and a half from New York City
Ooh.
on the water. It's a lovely spot, even though there's chaos going on all around around this poor country. And but I'm sitting in a lovely bubble of just lovely people and lovely energy. So I'm very, very grateful to be where I am. Yeah, thank you.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. So, Steve, your background is in breathwork, or well, actually, you've got quite a vast background. So let's have a chat about that. What is it? How would you? Let's talk into your work and what it is that you do and what got you here.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I'm an elder now. Matter of fact, I'll be 77 years old in a few months. And I've had a very varied life experience. And it's been wonderful, and I'm incredibly grateful. And, I'm a therapist, I'm a breath worker, I'm a coach, I'm a mentor. But mainly what I do now is I work with lots of other therapists, individuals, small groups, to help us to remember truly who we are
Yeah.
and to connect our heart to our spirit, to help open a portal to our divinity.
Mm.
And I do a lot of work with corporate people, as well as I said, individuals. I still maintain a small practice, which is mostly word of mouth. I am open to helping people. People come to see me, Catherine, when the pain gets great enough. It takes a lot for somebody to show up and really want to work on what's causing that pain, which is fear and anger and trauma and things like that. And so, I've spent decades in the business world, creating conscious business. I've manifested a number of global companies and done some really interesting stuff. But I've been retired for a while now. And so, I spent probably the last 10 years, 8, 10 years teaching um, conscious business, which is really about helping CEOs, managing directors, and people of authority in business to wake up to that fact of spirit. And it's hard to speak to that in a business environment. So we talk about sources of inspiration for them, but the whole point is to make them conscious that their people, their customers, their vendors, their products, their values are all meaningful, and to bring that throughout their policies into their companies. And you can easily shift that and speak exactly the same to our families, our communities. It's to bring love back into a conscious way of being in our lives. And I think it's actually why the world is creating the chaos that it's doing, is to actively invite people into asking themselves what's meaningful. There's so much suffering going on in our lives, that people are saying what has been is not working.
Mm.
And so all of my experience coming from, very fortunately, coming into a family with a very enlightened father and mother, you know? I mean, my father studied, he came within 6 months of taking his final vows as a Catholic priest, right? So he was very seeped deeply into spirit. And my mother is, for all practical purposes, was a saint. I've studied with some of the most marvelous, incredible spiritual masters in my life, and none of them had anything on my mother. You know, so I've been very blessed to come into a very nurturing, very loving family, big Italian, French Italian family. So it's big family. I mean, uh, not unlike, I would say, my experience of moving to New Zealand and speaking to a lot of Maori elders, and how important family was and is, and speaking the truth and allowing what we're feeling to be shared. You know, it's part of what's causing the pain right now, is people feeling separate and alone and disconnected.
Yeah.
You know, and so all of my upbringing, very early, was spiritually invited. I've studied with Benedictines for years. I've studied with um, Zen masters. I studied with an incredible Hindu master, Satchidananda, for many years. So my whole life, since my early 20s, so for the last 50 some odd years, has really been a practice of attempting to integrate all of this that I have experienced and learned into my life. And let me tell you, it's not easy, even with all of that, you know? I mean, I meditate every day, and I still fall into rabbit holes. So I understand that what is wanting now, it's not about the I anymore, Catherine. It's not about me. It's about we. It's about how we need to support each other, you know? And sometimes it's just listening, just being heard and being seen, and especially for young people. You know, the kids that are coming onto the planet right now, they're coming in with their lights fully on, you know? And so our challenge is to guide them in a nurturing way. And so that's the work I do. It's in helping individuals and families and small groups, and the corporates where I can, to support the heart to be manifested in whatever and however we do that. No?
We were talking earlier before we hit record around people that are, just being informed of some really heavy news and how they process that, and how you help support people on that journey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that what we're seeing on the planet right now, the chaos that is, when you think about it, you go back 10, 12 years, where you had that huge tsunami and off of Thailand, where 250,000 people died. That was kind of a wake up. Okay, that was one of the, it's inviting compassion. Okay, but that didn't seem to work. That was, you know, I mean, what does it take to wake up humanity? We had this COVID, where millions of people have died. Okay. And that didn't seem to wake. And then now we have this in the US, this man that is running this country that is creating suffering everywhere.
Mm.
You know? And it's like, so how do we respond?
Mm.
Okay? And it's like, the first thing, it's like when somebody's got a diagnosis of an illness, okay? Or somebody has lost a loved one, they've lost a child or a partner, or they've lost their job, or all the myriad things, okay, that can cause suffering. Okay. And it's like, how do we respond to that? Well, the first thing is to understand that peace doesn't come from what's going on outside.
Mm.
Okay. It comes from what's going on inside. And we as our, our cultures don't support that. I mean, if you think about it, it's like, how do we respond to that pain and suffering? Okay. It's drug addiction, it's sex, it's TV, it's the computer, it's anything and everything to avoid what's going on inside. And so, the first thing is like when someone is ill, okay, it's showing us, and this might sound harsh, but all the suffering that comes into our life is purposeful. And if we can begin to start looking at that, we're not victims. And so, you know, and it's difficult to do by ourselves. Okay. So we need to go. It's like, what support do I need to ask for? And a lot of people, most of us are really good at helping other people, but to ask for support for ourselves,
Mm.
oh, and so it means when these things happen, it means that we have to shift how we have been operating. So that's why these challenges happen in our life. In fact, it is part of life.
Mm.
And it's just we need to change how we react to it. And it we could do hours just on this conversation
That's right.
and because it's like, why is that so hard?
Mm.
So many of us have grown up in trauma or from trauma, single parentry. We just a lot of stuff that goes on within a family. And when that happens, we respond to what's occurring from what's called the limbic brain. It's the fear, flight, freeze mechanism, which is meant to protect us.
Mm.
But when that arises out of something that's happening in our life, we react rather than when the frontal lobe, which is our executive thinking, our mindfulness, our compassion, which is where we should be responding.
Mm.
Okay. There's a disconnect there.
Mm.
So it becomes a very challenging thing in our life. And it's like, Buddha's first noble truth was suffering exists.
Mm.
And it's there to bring attention to what needs to be looked at in our life. His second noble truth is we don't have to suffer. you know, it's
Yes.
the fact that our attachment, okay, to whatever is occurring is what causes the suffering. Now, someone says, well, wait a minute. Someone just told me I've been diagnosed with cancer. How do I detach from that? And here comes the bottom line, Catherine. And it's a difficult one because we're not taught this way.
Mm.
Is what's really real. The biggest the biggest fear that we all have is death. But what happens when the reality about death is nothing about what we've been taught?
Agree.
So it's like all of a sudden you have been diagnosed with, a fatal illness. Now we can go into fear. And, in the work that I do, Catherine, we say we die when the death urge gets greater than the life urge.
Yes, agreed.
And so to how do we respond to all of this chaos, whether it's a little suffering or a big suffering? Okay. The first thing we have to do is how can I bring more love into my life? And that's challenging for a lot of people.
Mm.
I mean, just to ask for more support. I mean, for some people, that's an impossible thing to do. What can we do in our life that makes me feel good? And people need to ask a deep question about what is it in my life? And a lot of people say, I mean, I ask people to make a list of the things that nurtured them. And I can tell you, there's a lot of people that can't come up with more than one or two things.
Wow.
Right. So when we have these challenges that show up, whether we lost a job or, we got a big breakup or whatever it might be, it's where we come to grips with the pain. And now, how do we respond to it? And I think that that's where it comes back again to community,
Mm.
to family. Does family come around? illness cannot exist in an environment of love. Okay. There's a wonderful, wonderful book called The Course in Miracles.
Oh,
It's
yes.
it yeah, believe me, it's a tough read because it's written in a very strong kind of Christian way. But let me tell you something. It tells and articulates the truth.
Yeah.
And I have studied many of the traditional religions, like I said. And the fact of the matter is, in the end, they all say the same thing.
Yeah.
Love as much as you can, wherever you are, for whatever is occurring. And we've turned that into a way to make war. And it comes. I know I'm a little bit all over the place here, but there is a purpose to this. It's like humanity is still in the sandbox here. We're still learning. And all of these things that are happening to us individually, what's happening to us collectively, the stuff that's happening on the planet right now, where people are watching the destruction of people in Gaza or Ukraine, the absolute unconsciousness, the greed, all of that is all arising now for people to ask themselves, how do we respond to this? That's why it's there. That's the purpose of it. Edgar Cayce, a brilliant, brilliant seer, spoke 50 years ago about what's happening right now, And so, but most people don't know these things. All they know is, I'm hurting. I want to have love in my life. I want to be at peace. But now they're beginning to ask, what can I do? Okay. Which is what brought me to the breath. And to me, that was miraculous in its own way, because the breath allows me to come into presence. It allows me to be still. So the first response to the challenges in our life should be to become quiet, because in that stillness, we will begin to have some clarity about what I need to do in response to this. And often what you'll find is that it's about a lot of limiting thoughts, how we were brought up, what our parents told us, what society has told us, all this, excuse my language, all this bullshit that we are now in the process of, as we say spiritually, emptying the cup, letting go of the limiting thoughts. So why do we get sick? Why am I suffering? Okay. All of these is because thought's creative. We are the thinkers, and our perspective, okay, gives us the environment for all this pain and this suffering. If we change the thought, as Buddha said, if you let go, okay, we can begin to create space to see what it is in us that we need to let go of, that allows that peace, that love, that support, that joy in.
Yeah.
The breath was the most powerful thing that I found. And it might not be for everybody, because there's a lot of wonderful modalities out there that will bring us. In fact, the truth is, if we didn't do anything, we would come to that place.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's who we are. The fact of the matter is that peace is always in us. It's the suffering that arises that creates the opportunity for us to experience that.
Yeah. Because why would
It's
we
worth
make
saying.
change if everything was always good all the time?
Right. Matter of fact, and to bring it back to another cornerstone, it's, why are we here? What are we doing here in this body and whatnot? We're here to create. We are here to articulate our divinity on this plane. Joy comes from when we are aligned with that. Presence and stillness opens up the portal for us to experiencing our own divinity.
Yes.
The egoic mind, which was meant to help us, simply is there to articulate that divinity in the world to the gifts that we've all been given, and everyone's unique with those gifts.
Mm.
Once we connect to Source, our God, and however it is you experience that, then shows us how and why we've been given those gifts and those skills. And when we're articulating, joy is the result of that.
When we look at people, they don't have to be walking a strictly spiritual path in order to be working with that Like we've got nurses, we've got doctors, we've got firemen, we've got policemen, they're of service. We've got people that are just being great mothers, great fathers, great daughters,
Yep.
grandparents. I think people can often think, oh, in order be working my path, it has to be this big grandiose.
Yeah. It's more, excuse me, it's more bullshit. There isn't there isn't anything that is not spiritual. Nothing. I don't care what it has. I mean, when our divinity is who we are, every single soul, every living thing has that. Okay. So it's like the expression of that. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you're a refrigeration guy, you're a plumber, you're a doctor, you're a corporate. It doesn't matter. All that is a vehicle to express that divinity, to express your loving consciousness, your awareness, that consciousness to come through. So it doesn't matter what you do. In fact, most of the suffering in the world comes from thinking that we're not good enough, we're not wanted, we are guilty, we're frauds, what all these, what we call in my business, right, the personal lie. I'm not good enough, I'm not wanted. Everyone has this in some manner.
Yeah.
And then we work with what we call the universal truth, which is the opposite. I'm perfect and I'm whole just as I am. And Catherine, what's happening on the planet right now is meant to invite people to understand that. And the community aspect, which is going to be the next manifestation of source energy, is community. It's helping each other by reflecting the best of who we are back to each other, as well as challenging each other to becoming the best. So community allows us on one hand to challenge, while at the same time, another aspect of community nurtures, which is the best environment for growth. And so that's our journey right now for everyone on the planet. You can look at what we're talking about in terms of countries. It's how is Israel being, challenged by the EU and by different things. It's just, look at him as just another soul that's messing up right now, you know, you know, and it's like, hello, do you see what happened in your life? And look what you're doing here. What's that about for you? But we need to have an environment that is based on loving kindness, compassion, joy, and learning something about equanimity.
Yes.
So in the midst of these challenges that are going on right now, we don't lose our connection to source energy, so that in our communication, and this is where you go to, it doesn't matter what you do. I don't care if you're a policeman on the street. I don't care if you're an attorney. I don't care if you're an artist. When we maintain our connection to source, which should be our absolute highest priority, and it's exactly what communities should be helping each other do, because then everything else that follows that is going to be inspirational. Now, yes, it means being more intimate. It means being more vulnerable. It means being able to be authentic. And these things we have not been taught that well. Now, interestingly, indigenous peoples hold that strongly all over the world. And we need them to step up. And they have been, which is, I think, wonderful. There was just recently in Auckland, I think a year ago, where indigenous people from all over the world came at a conference. I've been very fortunate to work with indigenous people in China and South America and in the US, and they all are connected to spirit through nature. They feel, they understand the earth. Most, especially Western cultures, have gotten far away from that, which is how we've lost our connection to source. We've been more engaged in stuff, we've been more engaged in our thinking minds. We don't walk around on the earth anymore barefoot. There's so many things that, in fact, most of the educated kind of say we're crazy if we do these things.
Yeah.
And that's why we are where we are. So I think that this process of people being seen and being heard, being acknowledged, making each other feel that we're connected, we're seen, we're loved. Um, that's what spirituality is. It's having that loving kindness and that compassion for one another, for inviting each other into a place of joy.
Mm.
When that energy exists, that vibration, that frequency, illness begins to dissipate. And so, how do you work with people that are ill? You love them. You love them. You make them know that you love them. And sometimes it's not even about what we do, it's very much about who we are. It's our being. And so, what does that mean? That means that our highest priority must be taking care of our own spirit. My master used to say, and anybody that knows me have heard me say this a million times, that he used to say, the only thing that we can truly be selfish about is our own peace of mind.
Mm.
If we don't have peace, we really don't have anything real to give to anybody. And if we are at peace, every single soul we come in contact with, we will impart something very real to them. And so that's our highest priority. It's what we should be doing for each other, especially within our families. And I understand this is not easy. I work with couples, and because what happens in relationships is love brings up everything unlike itself for the purpose of healing and release.
Yeah.
So that stuff's happening, it's in our faces. And so that's where working together in community helps to bring some balance to that.
I heard you earlier talking into master, right? So the calling of a
Mhm,
master or a sensei or something of that like, which seems like there's
mhm.
a hierarchy ness in spirituality, which is my understanding. And I'm just going to allow you to talk into it because I know that's not what you're implying. But there is no hierarchy in spirit because we are all equal because we are all one. So let's
That's true.
explain where those kind of titles came from.
Yeah, well, first of all, when I use the term master, okay, what I mean by that is anyone who operates in their life with an open, awakened heart. That's why I say my mother was a master, because she just loved unconditionally. That's what a master is. And what does one have to do to be in that place? They've had to open up and let go to feel that spirit within them, that oneness that you just mentioned. Is that we recognize that in one another, which is the term namaste from a Hindu tradition. I honor that which is divine in you, that is divine in me. That's the place. So when I use the term master, and everyone has that capacity, The, my big question has always been, because we're all one, what is all this? What is all this insanity that we're going through all the time? And the only thing that I can say, because I have a very limited mind, it's the only thing I can come up with is it's part of the creative process. It's how we evolve. It's how we expand. And because the divine itself experiences itself through us.
Mhm.
So as we're speaking and talking, we generate a frequency of energy that goes out. And because we're acknowledging that which is behind the egoic process. And so I think that that's what we're engaged in now. I think we're all masters. Some have realized it, okay? Realized masters, okay? They have jettisoned all the egoic thinking, all the limited thought process. So they just are. And this will sound strange too. Where do I find that so often? I have more friends that are animals than people because they are just simply unconditionally loving.
Mm.
When you approach an animal, a dog, a horse, okay, they feel it. They feel you right away. And if you have this open heart, they're just connected with you and you know it. And I'm sure everybody that listens to this will have had that experience in some way. And that's kind of what we're talking about. And sometimes you can meet somebody that you've never met before and you just feel connected.
Yeah.
Okay. And that goes to this thing that we call intuition, the gut feelings. Okay. That the gut feeling is connected to the heart, which is connected to the brain. Okay. The matter of fact, the heart is the bigger brain in the body than this brain. Okay. It has more neuron connections, etc. To honor that, we have not taught nor allowed each other to understand that we can, through that intuition, is the thing that probably should be trusted more than anything because it has more truth to it. Now, the challenge is how we respond to it, which is wisdom is when you connect that to what the thinking mind is doing. And so it's a process. Yeah.
So if we go back to the breath and that
Yeah.
clearing the path to that higher consciousness, to that
Mhm.
yeah. How would you recommend that to like somebody just starting out? Like, is it like how does that work, Steve? Do
Yeah.
they just
Yeah,
they just
yeah. Thank you for that because I think that what we're finding what we're seeing is a global emergence of breath work.
Mm,
And it's, the use of the breath for healing spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally has been around for eons. All spiritual traditions have incorporated the breath as a way to experience the divine, to become well. So this is not new, okay?
mm,
But it's reemerging. I was very fortunate to work with a guy by the name of Leonard Orr, Sandra Ray, Bob Mandel, Jim Morningstar, Dan Brule. These are people. Will Hoff is another one. These are people that are bringing the breath into global consciousness.
yeah.
And it is and it's called many things now. When I first started, it was called rebirthing, which is now, conscious connected breathing. But it's shamanic breath work, vivation, transformational breath, holotropic breath work, clarity breath. I mean, there's a lot of names to this process. But the whole point of it is to bring one back to presence and stillness and to um, when it's used in the way that we use it, it's very therapeutic. It lets the cellular memory, which has stored thoughts from literally in the womb through our infancy, in our bodies, and often very traumatic. And it's what we're trying to heal and the breath allows the awakening of that in an organic way that allows you to become conscious of these things so that you can deal with them, heal them, and let them go. Because thought's creative, so much that 90% of our thoughts are unconscious thoughts. So if you want to know about the quality of your thought, look what's going on in your life. If there's a lot of craziness going on, if there's a lot of just suffering and unkind, then there's stuff going on that is beyond, because nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to suffer. Okay. So the breath lets go of the thoughts that are creating that. Now, the other part is you have to take 100% responsibility. Okay. And a lot of people want to be victims. It's easy to be a victim. The problem is victimhood does not let go of suffering.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I've studied a lot of, the psychology of healing our family traumas. Now, we don't have to spend a lot of time doing that, but the things that are keeping us stuck, it helps to let go of, which means becoming conscious of them. The interesting thing about the breath, Catherine, is that in fact, you can by using the breath to come really present, really still, you can let go of that in a holy instant. It doesn't take 10 years of therapy. Okay? You can let it go in a holy instant. It is possible. Okay? But the process is more that it takes a little bit of time to become aware of this. The biggest thing that I have found working with the breath as these things arise is forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools for letting go. And it's not just about trying to forgive somebody else, it's about forgiving ourselves
Mm.
and to complete the process. And there's lots of ways of doing that, especially for somebody that might still be living, but also if somebody's passed away, there's ways in which you can share what you're feeling in a letter, say, write it all out, get all the feelings out, over a candle, let it go. But the point is to let go of the limiting thoughts, the I'm not good enough, I'm not wanted, the grief, the trauma, the fear, and there are techniques that I use to help people often. There's lots of modalities out there, but as an individual, you have to want to do the work. And that's really the hard part, Catherine. Yeah, and that's why I say that people don't come to me until the pain gets great enough. They can't avoid it anymore. They don't want to. They're ready to say, St. John used the phrase the dark night of the soul.
Mm.
When something has shown up in your life, someone just told you got 6 months to live, or your child just passed away, or your relationship of 50 years just broke, whatever. These things are so great that all the tools, all the prayers, all the biblical teachings don't even begin to scratch the surface
Mm.
of getting through this
Mm.
because it puts you face to face with something that's greater than you, and that's where the process begins. And so, and as I said, the whole world is getting to this place. People are paying $6 a gallon of gas, or in New Zealand, it's probably close to $4 a liter. You know, People are having to make choices. Do I buy food or do I buy gas? I mean, when things get that tough, where do you go? And you have to go inside. The breath is a wonderful way that allows you to do a couple of things. First and foremost, it allows you to have an experience, a direct experience of your divinity. It doesn't mean that every time you do a session that's going to happen, because it points out what's getting in the way of having that experience, which gives you the opportunity to let it go, which is what these challenges in our life are also for. It shows you where we are resisting our divinity. And then we can begin to start letting that go. It's like in the seminars that I do, it's waking up. Okay, it's having a direct experience of this, what we're talking about. Okay, and people can have those experiences in a lot of different ways. Making love to your partner, a newborn that is done, a sunrise, to an incredible sunset, or there's lots of ways you catch the perfect wave, and okay, that this is beyond me. Okay. So there's lots of ways to have the experience. So and then it's facing up. What do I need to let go of to have this experience more often? To create a frequency of energy that goes beyond the suffering and the pain. Love is the highest frequency from my perspective. So when I get up in the morning, I ask myself, how can I love more today? And probably more importantly, how can I allow myself to be loved more today?
Mm.
Okay. From my point of view, from a Hindu tradition, I'm a bhakti. It's about devotion. It's about honoring life, honoring the divine in everything. And that's how I practice. And so once you begin to face up and start working on letting go of those limiting thoughts, the next step is showing up, bringing that awakened heart into the world in whatever way you can, in whatever gifts that you've been given. And now you're on your way to being called a master, someone that is allowed their divinity to be being expressed in the world. And it doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing. It's just how we're being, how we're showing up. It's a smile. It's a sense of peace that someone attains when they realize that they are just a part of the whole.
So what I know is that when you establish a certain frequency, you tend to draw in more like-minded people, right? But when you have these shifts and changes going on within in your environment, and you have this pushback on you're coming in with a high frequency, somebody's responding to that in a negative way because it's bringing out whatever feelings within them that they're not ready to process. What is the best way forward in that? Now, I've asked other masters, senseis, spiritual leaders in the community in different spaces the same question. What I think I know the answer, but what would you say is the best
Well,
way to focus that?
yep. First of all, you have to remember they nailed Christ to the cross.
I didn't see that one coming, but okay.
Right. You can go into New York City and hold the door open from somebody, and they'll turn around and say to you, I can hold the damn door open myself.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do we respond? Okay. There's lots of ways you can respond. You can just smile,
Mm.
say thank you. You don't waste, they say, don't put pearls before swine. All that means is someone that is so angry,
Mm.
which is and they're pained within themselves, which is why they're responding. The answer to the question is you love them.
Yes, I knew you were.
It's compassion. It's compassion for them. And that's your practice. That's your work because Source is going to give you those people. They're going to be as a boss or as a partner or as one of your children. They're just going to be pushing your buttons. That's your work. That is your practice. So how do I, and this is the big thing. So how do I get myself into the place where I can create that kind of equanimity? You do it by what we said earlier, making yourself the highest priority for your peace. Because if you are angry and then your response, you're going to be reacting out of the limbic brain again, fear, fight, freeze.
Mm.
Okay. And that's where the world is today.
Mm.
That's what war is today. Okay. It's what we're trying to evolve out of. So the way we respond is with compassion. Now, that compassion might look like you just walk away. It might be a hug. Might be it's a smile,
Yeah.
Maybe it's, hey, you might want to read this book, look at this podcast, you know. I just did that today.
Mm.
Okay. I mean, uh, you're only responsible for you.
Yeah.
I'll say that again. You are only responsible for you. Okay. So to the degree that you can elevate your heart, your love, your frequency is going to impact every sentient being on the planet.
Mm.
All of life responds to every single thought, word, and deed that comes from an awakened heart. And that awakened heart is simply who you are. Every single soul is that. That's the irony of this, of people are fighting who they really are. And that's what that's where I think we're evolving to help each other see. I mean, working with clients, especially young teens, for instance, half the time their healing can come just by being really present, hearing them,
Mm.
seeing them. But it's not just kids, it's adults. And as you have experienced when we did some breathwork sessions
Mm.
that were full, and the reason they were full is because there's so many of us that are wanting that connection, that community.
Mm. Yeah.
And the way in which in my practice, everywhere I go, everything I do, I try to do with that awakened consciousness. So whether I'm buying groceries and I go and so I'll joke around with the person or I'll just smile or just trying to read energy of where I can acknowledge, sometimes it could be a hug, but often it's just presence.
Yeah.
That's our number one purpose.
Mm.
And what creativity is, okay, in terms when we talk about we're here to create, what can you create that can bring life, inspiration, love into people's hearts?
Mm.
As a mom, you do it by loving your children. As a police, you do it with as nurturing, as acknowledging, as seeing and sensing as you can. As a teacher, everyone has a way in which it's being called to operate in the world. And the consciousness we're talking about is beginning to ignite that reawakening, that knowing, and that remembering of who we really are, that will now inspire them, us, each of us, to walk in the world with our hearts open.
Yeah.
You
And I
know?
think having the knowledge that, not to personalize other people's experiences is a good tool to have when wanting to step out in a heart-centered way. Because I think that's really where we sort of jump back into that flight, or flee. What is it? Fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah, fight,
Response.
and freeze. Yep.
Yeah, is
Yeah,
because we feel, when you are sort of stepping out there with your heart open and you're being attacked, and then you're personalizing that experience instead of observing the experience and saying, hey, that's more about what that person's going through than
that's it.
than me. It
Yep.
means that you are able to continue to do that. I think
Yeah.
when you're reacting to that, that's when you shut down and you go, okay, I'm not doing
Yeah.
this.
So what are we talking about? It's compassion, but this compassion starts with us having compassion for us.
Mm.
Okay? That's where that begins. Because if somebody is attacking us, okay, it's like, what's your defense? In the Course of Miracles, it says, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. And so, I mean, every spiritual tradition will have a way in which that's communicated. And the Bible, it's like when you get slapped, you just turn a cheek to be slapped on the other side, you know? But again, I use the term practice because it doesn't mean that I am going to be showing up in this holy space. No, that's not what it's about. Being real.
Mm.
And it's about owning our humanity. Okay. I'm not looking to walk around and be a enlightened angel. I just want to be me and I want to be real. And so when I'm hurting, when I'm in fear, when I am despair or depressed, okay, I acknowledge that. I recognize that energy in me
Mm.
and I allow it.
Yes.
I don't push it away. I allow it. And then I do a little investigation. What's the thoughts going on here? Where am I feeling in my body? What do I need to do here? And then I'm trying to nurture myself through that because I know that I'm not my thoughts. So I begin to, what are the tools that I have that need to be applied to let go of this resistance, this particular thought, so that that no longer enters my life.
Hmm.
Because once you get that sorted, that the universe doesn't need to give that to you anymore. That's done. And
Yeah.
then you can now help others to get to that place.
Yeah.
So what's the best way for an alcoholic to be healed? Okay. It's not by reading a book. It's probably talking to somebody that's been through that process, came to an understanding that they're not separate from the divine. And they've worked through it. Now they have something real and authentic that they can share to help somebody through that. And you can apply that to every painful situation. And that's why we do men's groups and women's groups. And I've worked with groups of nurses and caretakers and whatever, because they can help each other, support each other to do just that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing, lived experience. Nobody knows what it's like to care for a loved one and then lose them.
Yeah.
But that's lived that themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's that
Yeah.
connection, having that connection that starts the healing process.
It's helping each other to love.
Yeah.
In regard, by the way, to the where you're being attacked and you're in a situation, it's like another little affirmation is, in my innocence, my safety lies. In my innocence, my power lies. When we can begin to start functioning from a high level of integrity, meaning that I'm just living my truth to the best I know it, there's an incredible freedom in that. And so when somebody challenges it, I can be nailed to the cross.
Yeah.
I've done my best. I've been authentic, and that's it. So whatever you want to do, go ahead. And there's so many stories of that cured the oppressor. It's the humble before we can really truly learn. That's part of what comes out of the dark night of the soul when you've been given this incredible fatal illness diagnosis or someone, it's like you realize I can't deal with this alone. It humbles us, which opens that portal that to the divine, Catherine, I learn every single day something. I'm just a rookie. I'm just a rookie. And, I'm very fortunate to have a lot of really good friends that are evolving mystics in their own way,
Mm.
So we keep each other, it's like, for instance, with the breath, we have peer reviews and supervision so that we can share these things honestly, openly to help us through the challenges. And that's what community is about, you know? But you have to be able to make an authentic commitment to one another, because every friend that I have, for that matter, anybody that I meet, but I don't, it's like, it's an open door to, if I'm messing up, I need you to tell me
Mm.
that I'm messing up. Then I could determine, when Peter tells me about Paul, it tells me more about Paul than it is Peter. I mean, it's
That's
like,
right.
yeah. So, but I have to look at that. I have to, what's going on in me to heal that. And that's why relationships are, because we're not taught that we mirror each other. When I'm working with a couple, somebody will say, one of them will say, they'll go off on their partner. And I tell them to stop, and I tell them to repeat exactly what they said, putting their name there. And I'll tell you, it's incredibly revealing, So, kind of the bottom line of this is the breath is a wonderful, powerful, direct modality to get to these limiting thoughts, to let them go. I mean, you can sit at traditional counseling, which I've done too, and you were just sitting and you could talk about this for 5 years. And when you start thinking the way I think, now you're healed. Now, who knows what's going on in my mind, right? So, the breath is a direct experience. I don't do anything to anybody. You have that experience. I can help guide it, and it can be very powerful. And you have, as we know, there's lots of wonderful modalities out there. You have to find the one that works for you. And it might not be the one that you think. It might be, one that you originally do and say, oh, this ain't going to work for me, you know? But that's right. That's often the egoic mind saying, hey, don't go there. you know, uh,
We're saying here.
yeah. But I also want people to understand that the challenges in their life personally and the challenges within their community, the challenges in the world are all there for a purpose. And that, in fact, once you begin to go inside and become still, you realize that you're safe no matter what, because you're part of the divine. There's nowhere to go, and that's what stillness allows us. This morning, I went across the street here, the beach is there, and I saw the sunset. And when that sunset came up, it was like I just dissolve, and there's an experience of, I don't question anymore the divine in me. I know I'm just a part of the process. I have seen people that were given 90 days to live that are now 25 years later and they are full of life. I've seen it. I don't have any doubts. So I can't say for anyone else, but for me, and that gives me an incredible sense of freedom. It gives me a incredible sense of peace, but it still doesn't mean I don't drop into a rabbit hole and I doubt sometimes. Okay. But the doubt doesn't last as long because my faith through practice has become stronger. When I get into despair, hope I experience and know it, and I've come with a lot of tools that I share with clients, that they can use that are practical to help them move through this stuff, learn from what the challenges were and to move through it and to then be in a position to help others. Yeah. Yeah, as my friend Ram Dass used to say, that's all true. And now what? The work is the work is the work, you know, and you got to do the work. And the first the first part of the work is realizing that I actually am a divine soul in this human body, and that's where you got to,
Everything's
someone tell, yeah. So I asked for guidance. I want it in black and white now. I don't want to have to guess. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
Mm.
Steve. And I hope we get to have you on the show again sooner rather than later.
I listen, Catherine, you're a delight. You're an incredible lady. You got a credible spirit. You got an enormous heart. And I am so grateful for you inviting me. The work that you're doing is, I'm sure anyone listening to any of your work or your presence is going to be absolutely benefited by it. So I'm happy to help in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you.